What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the After 29 podcast, episode 23, Family Trauma. I'm Vincent Dunstan, a.k.a. Minister V. Let's get it going.
It's your boy Malcolm Davis, Man of Steel.
Clayton Foster, big shoulder brother in the building.
Mozzie Boom, blessed and highly favored.
All right, guys, let's go to God in prayer. Eternal God, our Father, we come to you once again on this Friday evening, Lord, to give your name honor, glory, and praise, Lord. Lord, we just ask that you'll bless this podcast, bless each member on this podcast, Lord. And Lord, we ask that you'll bless this topic, that it may reach somebody, and that what is said tonight will be, it will fall on good ears and on good hearts, Lord. Lord, we pray that every episode that we do, Lord, is for the positive and for the good, Lord. But Lord, we thank you that you gave us a platform, Lord, that we are able to express our opinions and our views and to talk about those things that are near and dear to our hearts. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, guys, let's get it going. Family trauma, touchy subject, but definitely in our community, in the Black community, man, it's something we need to talk about. We should have talked about this 10 years ago, but it's, it's one of those things that in our neighborhoods and in our houses, we just don't address, the things that fall under this particular topic. So, let's just jump right in and, why don't we talk about family traumas, man? And we know those range from different things go into family traumas. It don't even have to be something that's so serious as like a rape or anything like that. It could be something simple like that happens in a family. But why is it that in our houses, man, we keep stuff to ourselves? Why don't we talk about it?
I don't know, man. We should talk about things, but I don't know, man. I think it's just... Black people, we don't talk about our feelings. We don't talk about anything. And it's sad because things go on in families all the time, and that we need to address it. On the first podcast that we had, we was talking about self-healing. You can't do self-healing without identifying those traumas that you had in your life and your childhood, and still, even to this day, black families like to call it generational curses.
Yeah.
But you can't get over generational curse if you don't talk about them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think we don't often talk about it because, as men, I say, as you've grown older, you don't want to talk about it because you don't think you're going to be viewed as weak. Mm-hmm. And I think also it goes back to just like the same reason why we don't go to therapy. We don't value it. We don't know, a lot of us don't know that it's needed. And then I guess some people may think it's just maybe some negative repercussions or something if they do talk about things that happen to them and damage them, along the way.
Yeah. I agree with Clayton. People hold things in because they think that, they're strong holding things in or whatever. And really it's damaging you inside, physically and mentally. And also I feel like embarrassment is also a key factor as well. You don't want to say, for example, something happened to you. you don't want to be viewed differently, and you want to if people are looking at you as you're a strong individual or whatnot, but really deep down inside that you're not. What happened to you. By you saying that, you're gonna be thinking you're gonna start worrying about what people think of you or whatnot. So
yeah, one of the things that you just touched on was you said there's some negative connotations that come with it. What I think one of those reasons that in our communities we don't talk about it is the stigma that's placed on a lot of different things, like why we don't seek therapy, why we don't discuss certain things, open and outwardly. There's this stigma that when you talk about different things in our community, you are seen as weak, or you're seen as, we've all heard it. Let's just say if it's something like you're going through, somebody in our family is dealing with suicide or depression. Oh, they ain't nothing wrong with them. We brush things off a little too easily, in our communities, and things like that. But I do think a big instance on why we don't talk about a lot of things in our families and in our houses, it all boils down to Black people are, I don't want to say secretive, but we do promote this whole, what happens here stays here, thing. And we tend to do that with a lot of stuff, and then don't get me wrong, we do it with the good too sometimes. Now, I don't mind it with the good stuff.
The good stuff is okay, but some of the stuff that we have to talk about and some of the stuff that we have to let somebody else know about that goes on.
Absolutely. Because when we don't, like you said, we continue the curse. It just continues on in generation after generation after generation, and then it becomes a learned behavior with each generation. I know I'm not supposed to, talk about this. you know. So I don't know. It's just one of those. It gets weird, But not only it does it become something that keeps being passed down and passed down, But what are some of those long term effects, of this continued trend? Somebody jump in there with that.
Man, I just think long term, I think it has effect on everything that you do in your life, man. Mentally, it can have an effect on you physically as well. And what I just learned from Clayton last week, that it can have health effects on you too that I didn't even know until Clayton brought it up, and he'll talk more about that. But even with relationships and those things, man, if you're in a household where your mother is getting abused and those things, you probably gonna see a guy differently in your later in your lives, and you can be able to trust a guy. All of those things are part of the traumas that you see, and it does have effect on your life. Whether the parents know it or not, kids see all these things and they hear things as well, and other forms of abuse too that we'll talk about too. But I think the main thing is mentally and emotionally that it'll have a big effect on you.
Yeah. So like when I first started doing a little bit of research on it, I just assumed it was going to be, the normal things that you hear are the long-term effects. Like, hear that, it's a social issue. They send people to social services because of trauma and things like that, or it's a mental health issue. Yeah, those things are true. And people turn to, like, abusing substances as a result of it. But I was listening to the Surgeon General of California. Her name's Nadine Burks Harris. She said she was mentioned a study from the CDC back in the 90s, like the mid 90s, where they were saying that, of course, it affects like brain development, your immune system, and even like your DNA. Like it affects how your DNA is transcribed, and a lot of people didn't know that. So she's like really big on like studying that. And she was saying that one instance she was talking about a young kid because they built a clinic in this neighborhood in California, and she was just, a pediatrician at the time, and this kid came in. He was 7 years old, and he was like, when she met him, he was like 7, but he was the size of the average 4-year-old,
right?
And he had asthma, and he came to her because his mom thought he had ADHD, and she said like a lot of the kids would come there for that, and she really couldn't diagnose him with ADHD. Right. So she asked a little bit more about the kid, like when did he start developing like the issues with like ADHD and behavioral problems, and she said it really started when he was 4, and he was like sexually abused. And she said like how they did like different brain scans and stuff, like your development of your brain and everything is affected by trauma. Like if you have like 4 or more instances of trauma, you're more likely to have heart disease and lung disease, and 12 times more likely to commit suicide. And and those others like lung disease and things like that, you're like 3.5 times more likely to get it. Even if you're not like one who turns to substances like alcohol and tobacco,
right,
you're still subject more to cancers and things, even if you're not one who partakes in substance abuse just because of childhood trauma. So it's crazy like how the health effects are like linked with it when we just think it's mostly mental issues and things like that, but it goes well beyond that.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with Clayton. Like depression, I feel like that's a huge thing. And I mean, of course, like what you want to do to, take that off your mind, and people might go to alcohol or smoking weed or whatever. And then physically, I feel like, it makes you, I guess it'll make it hard for you to approach people, whatever, or have a trust, as you had a strong, you looked at the people that were there that did that to you, thought they were your protector, whatever, but then, whatever, they weren't your protector. They did what they did. But yeah, I just feel like, for physically, they definitely don't have a strong communication skill or whatever. It makes me think about Antoine Fisher, and exactly, because when that happened to him, when he was trying to talk to that girl, whatever, like he was all timid and shy and bashful and everything like that. But deep down inside, he had a huge, he had anger problems and whatnot. He would fight just like that or whatever. So, I mean, everything what you said, I mean, it makes me think about that.
Oh yeah, one thing I forgot to mention too. She said that that when you have that childhood trauma, your life expectancy can be up to 20 years less than a person who hasn't experienced that trauma.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one of those long-term effects that we really don't mention a lot is, or I guess it's one of those forbidden things that as Black people we forget to talk about, is that a lot of times when we're experiencing things, or we are exposed to things, one of those things that happen in the long term is we begin to mimic and we become that which we were exposed to.
Yep.
And even though in the back of our minds, like, yeah, when I grow up or when I get older or when I get a family or whatever the case may be, whatever the trauma was, in the back of our minds is like, oh, I'm not going to be that when I'm not going to be like that. But because we haven't seeked out help, we haven't resolved those issues. We just do what Black people do best.
Yep.
We sweep it under the rug, or we throw it in the closet and we lock the key, and not dealing with it, just hiding it and sweeping it under the rug. That's not the solution. You know what I'm saying? So you can't get past what you haven't dealt with. So a lot of times in the long term, we literally become that which we despised, going through the trauma. And I'm not going to put my personal business out there, but there is, like I said, personal family traumas don't necessarily have to be something so serious and so great. It could be something like infidelity, witnessing infidelity and things like that in the marriage. Or it could be, physical abuse, there are different physical traumas. Like, I think of one of the physical traumas, and we're going to go into this next, but a family trauma is mishandling money. How many of us have seen those family members who just consistently and constantly, they mishandle money? Every time you turn around, they're broke. And they make money, but every time you turn around, they're broke. And then the people around them start to mimic those things. Next thing you know, their child can't handle money now. And then they're down and out and, on public assistance. And let me say, there's nothing wrong with being on public assistance, but there is when you don't necessarily need to be, just because you just mishandled your money. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, a lot of times we literally become that which we despise, or we become that which we're trying to prevent. Right. Yeah. We're working so hard to say, well, I'm not going to be this, and we end up becoming it. Why? Because as a community, as you all just pointed out, we don't seek out help. Yeah. We don't seek out, resolutions. We put it in the closet, like what we were taught to do. Like when it happens, we were taught to put it in the closet and lock the key. So we do it in the long term too. We keep it in the closet. Sometimes it doesn't come out and literally until somebody just breaks.
Yeah. Right. And I think oftentimes as adults, we don't often even know. Like a lot of us don't even know like things that happen to us in our childhood, how that affect us. We're just not. We're just not aware of it.
We think it's over with because we're not kids anymore.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We just don't even think about it. We just don't even connect it. So I think that's
why it's still there.
Yeah, I think that's why therapy is important. So you can like unpack those things and like, because as we get older, sometimes we repress things and like we don't really remember, and then the behaviors that we show as an adult, we don't know where they came from oftentimes. Right. And like, I mean, I've met people, like talking to people that I know who like have said things like about from their childhood, like they didn't get like a certain amount of love, or they didn't get
and now they don't know how to show love
from their
because
parents.
of it.
And then they're not connecting the dots of how that affect their behavior as an adult.
Right. So keep going with that, Clay, because that literally takes us into our next point that we wanted to talk about, was the different forms of childhood, adversity and traumas, So keep going with that, because like you said, there's a lot of things that we experience at the adolescent age, and then we become adults and we have no clue like why we feel the way we do about relationships or family or about work and jobs, whatever the case may be. And then after a while, like some of these things start to manifest themselves in a way, in our behavior, and it's like, whoa, like what happened? And then when you start to dig into it and like really give it the attention it deserves, then you start finding out like, I feel this way now at 35 because of this that happened at 10, which I didn't even know it affected me until like the dots started to connect. So, keep on with that.
Yeah. We're truly a product of the environment that we're grown in. Yeah. I mean, a lot of things, like when I was just, researching, like I didn't even like think about it till like I actually saw it in front of me. Like, people who grow up in like bad neighborhoods, like you have community violence. You see it, you see somebody else in your neighborhood get killed in front of you like that.
Yeah.
That's gonna be a huge effect on you. So like community violence. Some kids and people get into sex trafficking and stuff like that. Even like natural disasters, like like those poorer countries, if they have like a natural disaster, your whole home's destroyed. And I mean, even like I saw one that said like as children, some people don't know how to deal with grief, like losing a family member, and most kids they go on, move on, but some of them it hits them really hard, and they can't never really get past it. So it's tons of things that can traumatize you as a kid.
I definitely agree with that. Most people are a product of their environment. We do what we have been taught to do.
Yeah.
Just like the whole thing with Adrian Peterson when he beat his son. And a lot of people was like, "Oh, he can't beat his kids." I saw the pictures, and they were overboard in what he should. It's a thin line between discipline and abuse, and he crossed the line. But again, he said his daddy used to whoop him like that, so that's all he knew.
It was normal to him.
It was normal to him. Right. So he was traumatized and didn't even know it. But he did go and get the help, and the child mother did the right thing.
Yeah.
No longer can you allow that stuff to happen without reporting it. She did the right thing. So everybody that was bashing her, saying that she shouldn't have done that, he's allowed to whoop his son. He is allowed to discipline his son. He's not allowed to abuse his son.
Absolutely.
It's a big difference. Yeah. And but like I said, he got the help that he needed because that was the only thing that he knew.
Yeah.
And that's what he carried on. So if we don't break the change, we're gonna keep carrying it on to the next generation. This is a generation that break all those changes.
Yeah. So, Mazir, what's some other different forms, of childhood adversity that we go through, man? Like, even if it was from personal experience or just just things you just kind of witnessed.
So I don't know if this will be considered verbal abuse, but I mean, like not telling your kids that you love them or whatnot.
Right.
So.
I wouldn't say it's abuse. I would say it's just a lack of affection.
Okay,
but they need to hear
it's
it.
adversity.
Yeah, it is adversity.
Like I said,
not abuse, but it is adversity.
Yeah, I dealt with someone who said that like they never got approval from their father,
right?
And then seeing some of the behaviors in the adulthood, it made sense,
Right?
And I feel like that's a very strong thing because I mean, kids need to hear that that they're loved. They want to know that they're loved. They want. I mean, it's like pretty much like I don't want to kind of say that kids are like animals or like a dog or something like that. For example, you have a dog, a little puppy, whatever. Even if it does something bad, like you like scold them or whatever, and then you say like, and then they come back to you with like a smile on their face, or whatever, happy and everything like that. But anyway, besides all that,
so
like,
you're saying you need positive,
yeah. So you need to tell your kids that you love them, so that way they know that they're loved instead of them going out here in the streets trying to find someone a pimp or something like that, or someone selling drugs, because then that's the wrong way, and they're gonna feel like, well, that's true love, but that's not really love because I mean, they're putting themselves in the harm's way of going to jail or getting killed or just being abused by an adult or something like that. So
yeah, but you know what? That's really interesting that you bring that up though, because one of the long-term effects to that, like you just said, is, well, my parents never told me they loved me, or I never got that positive reinforcement, or I never received that affection. Right. So I'm gonna go out here and find it in the streets when I get older, because I don't care what age you are, and male, female, 5, 15, 35, everyone needs positive reinforcement, and you can try to lie and try to be all manly and macho about it, but every man and woman likes affection, and they like hearing things,
Yeah,
about.
I mean, I found out with my kids. I tell my kids I love them all the time, but they like hearing that. Good job, Marcus.
Yeah.
You have, before you tear a kid down, you got to at least build them up first, and
then tell them why.
Yeah. And that's like when I do my form of discipline. I have stages to my form of discipline, and I let them know why am I disciplined. I just don't go ahead and send them to the room without teaching them a lesson on why they're getting sent to the room.
Because if you send them straight to the room, they're not going to know what's going on. Or
he just sent me to the room.
Right. And you have to do it in a positive manner so they can come back. They'll be more comfortable in telling you things if you do it in a positive manner. You can't just constantly yell at them, because if you constantly yell at them, they're not going to talk to you anyway.
And then like what Malcolm and everybody else was saying, like, to break the cycle, like if you are a parent or just, have brought a kid into the world, you know, and you know that your parents didn't like really give you the love or say that I love you, I'm proud of you and stuff like that. Break that cycle and start telling your kids that, because then when they feel that, they're gonna be like, okay, well, my dad and my mom did that to me, so I'm gonna do that to my kids, whatever.
Right, and because that's how you started.
Right.
Yeah, but the issue with that is, like we just talked about a second ago, a lot of times the aftermath of those long-term effects are sometimes you don't get to do like what Malcolm's does. Like, well, you know what? Well, I got this, so I'm gonna do this with my kids because I didn't get this, so I'm gonna do that. But you have in a lot of instances where, because people didn't get that, they don't know how to do anything else but that, because that's all they knew. You know, and another form of, you know, that childhood adversity that we can talk about is, I think one of the disservices from personal experience in my childhood is children being exposed to adult situations. I don't think children should be exposed to adult situations, and I'm not trying to put like, you know, anybody's business out there, but it is what it is now, you know. But like witnessing infidelity, that's not something children should witness or even play a part of. You know,
I agree with you.
No, I'm just saying, I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty sure somebody's gonna call me and say, well, why you putting my business out there? Hell, it happened. It is what it is. You know, I witnessed, you know, infidelity in the home or whatever, and I'm not gonna lie to you, and as an aftermath, witnessing that, saying like, when I grow up, I never want to be like that. What did me and probably my sisters as well, what did we become? And you know, I know especially when I was in my 20s, I played every girl I got my hands on. Not there, and I'm just being honest. And you know, if we can be honest for a minute, there wasn't, almost up until a certain point, but up until a certain point, until a woman broke.
To do that though.
But after a while, you got to break that cycle though. Now, what broke the cycle for me
that's
was
a good cycle in your 20s.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if that's you, but the thing is,
I'm getting y'all young players in your 20s. In your 20s, you do all your playing.
You do go through things like that,
and you cheat and do all those things.
I don't know if that sounds
right. No. But then when you get later in life, in your 30s, then you ready to marry a person because you got all of it out of the way. So do it in your 20s.
Hopefully. Now, we all gonna go. We all went through things in our 20s, and you know, and those years, you know, but when you witness some of those things, you have a hard time viewing relationships a certain way. And I'm really just speaking on my experience. You have a hard time viewing relationships a particular way when you get older. Now, the whole plan and all that stuff like that, okay, that stuff is out of my system, especially once I got out of my 20s and well into my 30s or whatever. But it still affected my outlook on relationships as a whole. And like I said, one of those things is, and I'm only just speaking on one thing, but overall, exposing children to adult situations, I think, is a big no. Children should not see everything. No, we shouldn't keep certain things from our children, like if a family member is sick or, you know, or dying. Okay, things like that you don't shield your children from. They need to know that that's a part of life. Infidelity is not a part of life. It doesn't have to be. It's a choice. Death is not a choice. It's inevitable. You know, so health issues, things like that, we should deal with. And I'm not putting anybody down or anything like, because I know everybody does. Everybody makes mistakes. We all make mistakes. But when the children are exposed to it and become a part of it, I think that's a line that was drawn and crossed. And like I said, and those long-term effects is you become that which you despise. You know what I'm saying? And you try so hard to break the cycle, you continue the cycle. Now, one of the things I can say earlier on, now my son is 17. Earlier on, I did some things in front of my son that I probably shouldn't have done involving women. Like, he's seen certain things. Like, he's seen me drive up, you know, we met one girl or whatever, and, you know, he gets to know them. And then not long after, probably like a few weeks or sometimes the same week, he's with me again. And he sees me with yet another female. And now in his mind, oh yeah, it's cool to be with different females. And I had to, it's cool when I'm doing that by myself, especially at that age. But exposing, like I said, again, it doesn't matter what you do as an adult. Exposing your children to it is a no-no. Because no matter what stupidness I'm doing, I don't want my son to think that is okay. And I know as fathers, sometimes like, I want my son to be a player. No, I really don't. Because the cycle has to break somewhere. You know what I'm saying? So it was one of those things that I consciously made a decision, you know, as he was getting older. My son would only see me with one female. That's why he didn't see me playing nobody or anything like that. And now, if I was single and I had a friend, and especially he's older now, he drives, he might see me with a friend or something like that or whatever, you know. But, and even still, even at this age, he's seen me in one relationship with one woman. Now, granted, whether the relationship worked out or not, that's different. But he didn't see me with multiple women because I want to instill that in him, that it's not cool, even though I know he's going to do it. We know he's going to do it. We all did it.
If you dating, man,
But we all did it. I get that. I get that. But he's 17. But what I want him to know is that, yeah, you're going to do stupid stuff. That's absolutely. But overall, women must be respected. And I don't want him to have some cavalier attitude towards women. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, he's going to do things. We all did, you know, and we respected women. We just played them sometimes. I'm just putting it out there. That's the God honest truth about it. That's the reality. But I want him to have an attitude of respect towards women, even though he's going to do stupid things, you know, anyway. But now that we know those, you know, those different forms, the few that we talked about.
One of them that we didn't talk about is sexual abuse in the Black family. It happens a lot of times.
Oh my God, and we throw it under the rug.
Right. And that's what I was about to say. And we throw it under the rug, and we don't even report it. And I think that is...
and we convince our kids that
it didn't happen.
Right.
Yeah. We need to start listening to our kids, and we need to investigate if these things happen. I know on 2 occasions where this did happen, and I think family members know about it, and they just push it under the rug.
Right.
And I think it's sad, and we have to start protecting our kids better. Everybody got this person in their family where they are not allowed to come over if your parents are not home, or they're not allowed to be around kids by themselves.
Don't send your daughters over there with this person.
Why? Why are you telling? Because you know something is wrong with this guy.
But yet no one wants to do anything about the problem.
Nobody wants to report it. Nobody wants to talk about it. And I think it's sad that we have to start protecting our kids. I know 2 instances. One instance, it happened to a little girl, and she told her uncle, and her uncle almost killed his brother over that, and the guy went to jail. And the second instance is that nobody told anything, and he was a free man, and the kids actually went into hiding and those things, and nobody is even reaching out to the kids, and it's been a couple of years ago. And the thing is that I think Black families know this stuff is happening, but then we try to convince ourselves that it's not. Yeah. And then we don't even believe the kids when they
because we don't want to deal with it, number one.
Because we don't want to deal with it.
2, we don't want others on the outside looking like, oh, yeah, y'all got a family full of rapists or this, that, or molesters or stuff like that. Right. We don't want the stigma.
Yep.
So, and exactly. So, but it's one of those where it's like, instead of dealing with it, we just rather sweep it under the rug like it didn't happen. Yeah. And then it continues on versus, you know what, let's deal with it right now.
But that's going to have effect on that kid for the rest of their life. Yeah. And it's also going to
They can become promiscuous.
It's going to kill the relationship that you have with that kid as well. And if that kid has, you know, that kid is going to feel like she's alone, like she didn't have help from anybody in her family or him if it happened to a little boy. And I just think that's what family is for. Family is there to help you when you need it the most, and
not cover it up,
and to believe you, and not cover it up, and I mean, pretend.
And then also, like what Malcolm was saying, or to add on to that, it's like, you know, if a kid goes through that and they go to their mom and dad thinking that's their protector, and like you fail them and not believe and say, oh, it never happened, or just hush your mouth, don't like tell anybody about it, then that, you know, destroys that relationship and that bond, because they're like, well, okay, this person is brought me into this world and they're supposed to protect me, right? And it's like pretty much they stab me in my back, so that's when they go on that downhill.
They feel like they don't have anybody.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So now that y'all bring that up, how can we as family members, you know, especially in the Black community, how can we as members of the Black community and family members, how can we offer help to those in need? Because it's not the easiest thing to do. It's easy to say, well, just say something, but we've all experienced throughout our lives. It's not as easy as 1, 2, 3 to just speak out on it. It should be.
Yeah, but I feel like a lot of times you can sense things are going on with your family members. You just know.
Yeah. But how can you help though?
Well, you can just pull them to the side and just ask them, hey, is everything okay? you can talk to me about anything. I mean,
So,
no
but
matter what it is, you can talk to me about anything.
But I'ma
and
just
you just
play
got to reaffirm that
Right.
to them multiple times until they feel like it's okay for them to talk to you about it. You know what's going on with your family members. You know what's going on with your friends. You know when they happy. You know when they sad.
Right.
I mean,
At least you should.
you can't call them family if you don't know if they're going through things. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
I just think family members know more. They just don't want to get involved.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's like a 2-stage process. I think conversations like we're having today are important, like on a large scale, just for like the people that you don't know, or even your family members that you don't know that they're going through something. Just let them know that you have some awareness and you have some information. You know a little bit about this topic. I think that's the surface level of it. But like on like a personal level, like with your own family, I think you just have to be there and like be available and let them know that like, hey, I got your back through anything, no matter what you're going through. You can talk to me about it. Right. So I think as we said earlier, it's a tough thing. We don't always talk about it, and people don't always come forward about it because of shame and guilt, and they think that people won't believe them, or they think they're going to be less of a person by letting people know what happened. So I think we just need to talk about it and let it be known that it's okay to get these things out in the open, so that you can begin that healing process. And I think the final thing that's important as Black people, we need to destigmatize therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what Malcolm and Clayton are saying. First, I mean, definitely make sure that you tell your kids or just any kid in general, like, hey, you can make sure that they feel safe or whatever, because if they feel like, that you would, if they feel like they're going to get in trouble by it, they're not going to share anything with you. But by you, keep telling them over and over again, like, hey, you can come to me. I'm a safe haven. If you need to talk about anything, I am here for you 100%. That's a huge thing. Another thing is, for parents or just family members or anything like that at all, if a kid tells you something, believe them. And I'm not saying for example, I mean, of course, kids sometimes lie, but for something like this,
take it seriously.
I believe in that system of trust, but verify.
Right, and I would say, take it seriously, and make sure that let that be that radar that tings off that you need to pay close attention to your kid or the kid and whoever they're around or whatever. For me, and another thing is also teach your kids about no areas. I mean, I taught my daughter saying, hey, if anyone make sure this is the no area. No one needs to touch you in those places, except if you get in the bath or you're giving yourself a bath. That's different. But for anybody else, you need to come tell your mom or me or whatnot. But yeah, make sure that you talk to your kids and say hey, and don't, if you're in certain situations, if a stranger or just a family member, if you feel uncomfortable, make sure that you run or something. But I mean, for me, I know I would never put my kids in that situation, and that's for anybody. They should never put their kids in a situation that they can potentially get harmed. If a family member has attended a certain past dealing with stuff like that, why put your kid around that person? So
yeah. I mean, but the thing to that is most people in our community don't put their kids in that situation.
Right.
Because they know what it is. So they're not going to put their kids in that situation, not on purpose or whatever. But what they also won't do is, but no one's going to say anything about the person that's doing these things, whether they're abusive, they're molester, rapist, or I don't know, maybe they're a thief. Hell, we all got a thief in our family. That's another trauma that we don't talk about. We all got that, or that the drug dealer, or the drug user in our family. Everybody keeps their own household away from that particular person, but nobody says anything about it. No one approaches the subject of how do we deal with this? So I believe that one of the best ways that we can offer help in any of these situations is, number one, keep your eyes open. Right. And I know it's kind of corny, but that whole thing that they say, if you see something, say something.
Yep.
Do that.
Right.
Stop sweeping it under the rug.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You sweeping under the rug, all it means is, okay, it didn't happen to you because you saw it and you knew what to look out for. Right. Okay, but what about the next person?
Yeah.
So all right, moving right along. People who deal with certain family traumas. Let's talk about, how they are mishandled in our society. And one of the things that we talked about the other night was a lot of times people who go through things, they start to exhibit different behaviors. And one of the things that I was talking about is that a lot of times people go through things, they start acting out, and they become adults who have never processed these feelings from childhood or whatever, or even if it happens to them in adulthood, you never process those feelings, you start acting out, and then your ass end up in jail.
Yeah.
And I think that's one way that society has mishandled people who go through things, because we want to just throw everybody away instead of giving them the help and the rehabilitation, that they deserve.
And that's what the prison system was about, was supposed to be. But that's not what it is. They just want to lock you up so you can get some cheap slave labor out of you. I just think we have to handle everything with care, and caution. If most kids have behavioral problems because something is going on at home.
Yep.
And a lot of times you have to be a teacher that can identify these behavior problems. He ain't never did this before. Why is he acting like this now? And we have to start assessing that, hey, maybe it's something that's going on at home. Maybe I should send him to the guidance counselor as opposed to sending the kid with the behavior problem to the office so he can sit in the office all day so he can get a spell from school. We have to figure out these things, and we have to handle things with care. And I think if we do that, I think more people will be open to share their problems and issues with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the information that I found on like how people are mishandled, it just kind of went hand in hand with like other issues that we have in our society. So we already know we have an issue with law enforcement, how they handle like mental health cases and things. They'll come into the situation as if it was a criminal situation when it's really a mental health situation. So with that being said, when you have someone who's having a issue with these things, they get into the criminal system, which is not the help that they need. And I saw this one article saying that they researched like 93,000 like juvenile offenders. Out of those 93,000 kids, like 75 to 93% of them experience trauma as a kid. At least one. So that was just at least one. And
that's most of them pretty much.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that, because we already know like childhood trauma is linked to many things like criminality and depression, anxiety, and things of that nature. I think that starting with handling people who have these issues correctly will also help with some of the other issues that we have issues with in our society, as far as like the way that law enforcement handles people with like mental health issues and things like that. I think it starts with addressing and make sure we're handling childhood trauma with care first, and then that will alleviate some of the other issues, pardon some of the other issues.
Because what you mentioned, it made me think about. I think this happened just recently, but it was a guy. I guess someone in the subdivision ended up calling the cops or whatever, and it was a black guy. He was mentally challenged, and when the cops got out there, instead of them trying to talk to the African American and understand his point of view or see what he's going through or whatnot, they automatically considered him a criminal. They threw him on the ground, tased him, and then tased him again in the back of the neck. And like I guess kind of like what happened with
Was that a naked dude?
No, it wasn't him. No, it wasn't him. But and then they did the same thing with Derek Chauvin, where the cop had his knee on his neck or whatever. But so instead of just automatically assuming that each and every African American is a criminal, I mean, definitely make sure, try to get to know the person, talk to them, and then you can feel the situation, feel yourself through the situation. If this person,
that's not how they're
trained. I understand that, but I think that's what they needed. Get some training on.
But from my understanding, they are trained to de-escalate, not nullify the situation.
But they're not trained to deal with people with mental health issues.
They are not trained.
But I think that's...
Well, you're right. Then they should be. Because
but that's
why they always saying that they want
basic law enforcement class is like 6 months long.
Right. That's why people always like saying that they should have someone who's a professional in with mental health when they send police out.
Right.
But sometimes it's hard. You don't know the situation until you get there, so it's hard to, you know, in their defense, you know, it's hard to gauge if this is just a criminal situation or if this is like a mental health situation.
And it is. You don't really know.
Yeah, true.
So a statement that we've all heard all throughout our childhoods, right? And I believe I know the answer to this. At least I hope I do. But the statement, "What happens in this house stays in this house." What's your thoughts on that? And should we do away with it?
I think we should do away with it. What happens is if it's like good things, then it's fine. But
We hit the lottery, nigga. Don't tell nobody.
you know, like normal things. But if you are abusing one another, then that's when you need to go outside the house and get help. And I think it's appropriate to do those things. Now, if you and your wife get into an argument, that should stay into the house. She shouldn't be telling her mama what y'all argued about or anything like that. Yeah. But if it started to get physical and those things, then she should.
If it falls under the category of trauma, an argument is not trauma.
Yeah, trauma. Then I think you definitely should seek help.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's really a no-brainer. I think with that question, like. Yeah, certain smaller things don't really need to be carried outside of us, but it was a major thing that's affecting everybody in a negative way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should be some resource out there. You should reach out to some other resource to get help, because at the end of the day, as we've already said, it's going to have long-term effects if it continues on. Yeah, it's going to have long-term effects on everyone in that house.
Yeah. Right. When they say, like, you know, what happens in this house stays in this house, if it's like anything severe, like sexual abuse or to where you see your mom is getting beat down by your dad or whatever, that I think that whole saying is BS. You know, if someone's getting hurt or harmed in any type of way, you need to go out there and get help. Yep. Because in order to stop that process, you have to, you know, step out there and get the help that you need and whatnot, because if things continue to stay in there, someone will get hurt in the long term or get killed or whatever. So
and women, we know y'all didn't get blackouts from falling down, so stop that line.
Right.
Oh, you remember that?
But I mean, like what Malcolm said, I mean, but in some ways it can be a good thing. Like if, you know, your kids are doing good in school, whatever, I mean, by all means brag about that. I mean, doing good in school or just, you know, going to college and different things like that. I mean, that those things are good to, you know, spread out there. But anything, I mean, and any little arguments, whatever, between mom and dad or whatever, that should stay inside, because, you know, the public gonna look at that. But we're not gonna go down that hill. But
I mean, I'll just simply say unequivocally no. I mean, not no, but it does need to go away. Like, that's not something we need in our houses. Now, of course, there are exceptions, which technically they don't fall into this category, because that's not what happens in this house stays in this house type stuff. Like, oh, somebody hit the lottery. That's not what happens in this house type stuff. That's a don't go telling all this because I don't want no begging people coming up to the house. That's different. But that whole notion, we've all heard it several times throughout our lives and our families, and I know I've heard it in our house. You know, what happens in this house stays in this house. I think that needs to go away. I think it does way more harm than it does any good. Sweeping anything under the carpet is never a good thing, because one, you don't deal with it. Two, you don't, you know, and by not dealing with it, it's just going to continue on. And then the last thing is, which usually ends up happening, is the cycle continues. You know, so I think we need to do away with that as a society. That whole what happens here stays here. No, if it's bad and it's happening, you need to tell somebody, and then whoever you tell needs to not sweep it under the rug. Don't go to grandma, because grandma's got to stop saying, "Oh, it's okay, babe. Well, you can just stay over here with me tonight, and we won't deal. You know, you don't have to go back home tonight. Okay, but what happens when that child goes back home the next night?
Right.
The cycle continues. So, with that being said, how do we break the cycle?
Would you break the cycle about talking about things?
Absolutely.
And that's the only way I think we can break the cycle.
Yeah.
To talk about it and try to do better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's gonna take, of course, talking about it, having it out there in the open, but also us as people, like, we need to have some awareness of like these things that happen. Like, you know, we could have had, you know, a decent childhood and never experienced some of the crazy traumatic things that we've read about, seen online and stuff like that. Like this stuff happens, and like it's some extreme things that happen. So we just need to be informed of things like this happening. It could happen to someone you know. So we just need to be aware and have our eyes open and like just be close to the ones that are close to you. Like they're supposed to be your family. Just make sure that they know that you're a resource that will help them no matter what.
Yeah, definitely talk about it. And if you're getting hurt, I mean, definitely seek. If you can't talk to your mom and dad or whatever, seek somebody that you trust. Because you don't want to like continue to go through that same loophole or whatever. And also listen to your kids. If they're saying that they're being hurt or harmed in any way, definitely take heed to that. Make sure that you're aware and make sure that you that your spider instinct, if you want to call it, like it is going off, and you pay close attention to the surroundings and everything like that. And don't think that you're weak or be embarrassed about like what happened or whatever. Because I mean, by you getting help, that'll help you out in the long run or whatever. So
breaking the cycle. First thing is we got to talk about it.
Right.
We got to talk about it, and not only once we talk about it, we've got to admit that it's happening, and that's not to the person that it's happening